They really didn't like the player's handbook in there because it taught you how to build a fireball. We wouldn't go to third rec. We would stay in and play for 4 to 6 hours. And he's like, oh, what are you reading? Oh, that nerdy stuff. And then I throw him a book. And since then, every night, hey man, let's play, let's build a character. Let's play, let's build a character.
I like to use this channel to amplify things happening in RPGs that interest and inspire me, and to shine a spotlight if I can on people who are doing positive things in the community. I spent some time at one of my local game shops, Breakpoint Games in Mount Dora, Florida, and I saw an advertisement for how to run D&D, and I heard that it was taught by a man named Keith Davis who got his start running Dungeons & Dragons while incarcerated. Prisons are something that many of us push to the back of our minds, and we don't like to think about what goes on there, but they have a lot of free time, and RPGs are an activity that isn't completely banned for prisoners. And if you're like me, you may wonder how they function differently behind bars. Keith agreed to sit down with me and answer all my questions about this, and I hope it answers some of yours as well. Also, if you're wondering what Keith's crime was and how he ended up in prison, rest assured that these answers will not be in this video. He is not on a registry, but beyond that, I do not see it as relevant to the topic at hand. So anyway, as always, please like and subscribe to this channel. It helps me out a lot, and I'm hoping to bring on more thoughtful people to share with me about RPGs soon. Anyway, onto the show.
I'm Keith, heavy equipment mechanic. Been doing D&D for 2 years in Breakpoint. This was actually the room I started in. I teach not only the class of how to run D&D or how to play D&D, but I also run the history of D&D, of Tyrell and Faerun and everything like that. So to begin with D&D, I'm going to say things that might sound different, but when I was on the back in '98, my friends tried to get me into it. It's a little difficult, it was 3.5, so it was a little bit hard. Didn't really get interested into it until I went to prison. Prison, you have nothing to do in there. So a couple of guys say, hey, you want to play D&D? You have nothing but time in there. So I read the books and started playing, and then I had more fun running the games.
How many books did you have access to in prison?
Okay, so in prison, here's the problem. I had bat guano and sulfur. And they were afraid we were actually going to make fireballs.
No way.
That and making weapons in the 3.5 or Player's Handbook and the DMG, it tells you how to make weapons. You need 2D4 worth of material. So they thought we were going to get, 2D4 worth of material and build a weapon.
Oh. So what did you have instead of that? Or did you have...
we had the books, but we had to sneak them in there.
Oh.
Just like dice, we had spinners.
Okay.
It was a piece of cardboard that came out of the back of the notebook paper with a paper clip through it, and we did the numbers as far as the dice, and we would spin it.
Okay. So were there any other accommodations like that you had to make in order to...
Actually, I remember playing Shadowrun, which Shadowrun's D10 system, or D100 system. We took Scrabble tiles, and on the back we write the numbers and use a sock.
Oh, that's clever. And so did anyone there, aside from the people in the game, know what you were doing, or was this something you had to hide?
Well, when I was in one prison in Daytona, I won't say their names because I don't want to get in trouble. When I was in Daytona, the officers would watch us do gladiatorial in the stadiums and watch us do gladiatorial battles.
Okay.
So they were interested. And the funny thing is, my game in Daytona, I actually had people from different organizations. I don't really want to say gangs, but there was multitudes of Hispanics playing, whites playing, blacks playing. You have what's called prison politics there, but when we got together and we played D&D, we just threw that out the window and played D&D.
So you'd have all sorts of people who didn't get along outside of that, kind of putting aside their differences and coming together.
To play D&D.
Okay. And do you feel like that diffused tensions overall between people in prison, or when the game was over, was it just back to business as usual?
So the thing about it is, in prison, you don't have nothing to do. Okay, you have books, which I got into the Faerun books, the Dragonlance books. I mean, I've read hundreds of books. The thing about it is we take it kind of serious in there. I remember we played Strahd 5 days a week for, I think it was a year, and then we had a new player came in and kill us at the end after 2 weeks, and we kind of waited for him to get in the shower, and we threw cold water on him and messed with him. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we take it
Wait,
serious
so
in
this
there.
5 days a week.
5 days a week for a year.
Wow. How long were these sessions? Were they like?
So, you know how you have daylight savings time. We wouldn't go to third rec. We would stay in and play for 4 to 6 hours.
Wow. In prison, you can play D&D for 4 to 6 hours a day.
Nothing else to do.
No, I understand. Let's not make it sound too attractive. No.
Oh no, it's
I know. That's just a wild thought. I hadn't actually thought of that before.
But here's a little tidbit. Now, maps, I used to get people to give me computer paper, and I take the ruler and I draw out the maps. So I take one of the books, if somebody had like one of the books that you run out of, or something like a Dungeon or Dragon magazine in there, I would look at the maps and I would put it on computer paper and draw it. We had colored pencils, so I would draw them out, color them. So that was another way that we got around not having maps. We'd draw them out.
So I actually didn't ask you this. I assumed you did theater of the mind, but you did maps and minis still. Like, what did you use for minis? Did you have minis, or were they like?
We did. They
chess
were called
pieces?
chess pieces.
Ah, yeah.
They were chess pieces.
All right.
You know, we used chess pieces or erasers or whatever we could find, or homemade make. Now, they didn't look like the minis like we have now. You know, they might be a piece of soap, you know, kind of carved into something like a rock, and we would use that.
Now, I'm sure you had like a couple really good ones. Like, what was Strahd?
What was Strahd?
Yeah.
Strahd was the king.
Oh,
he would be the Black King.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense, actually. So, wow. So you went through like adventure modules like Curse of Strahd. Did you do any others?
Let's see here. We did the Demon Web Pits.
Okay.
A lot of Forgotten Realms. But then again, you got to remember 3.0 had the Faerun campaign setting. Now 5e is Faerun.
Yeah.
So we had to buy the campaign settings. They were fine with the campaign settings and everything like that. They were just afraid of the, you know, player's handbook on how to make fireballs and how to make your own weapons, where some of it you're not going to find 2d12 worth of adamantine to build a weapon. And that was our biggest thing. And when we write requests, it's like, you're not going to find this. You know, you're not going to find bat guano or sulfur on a prison. So, but if they ever did come around, I would love to work with them and show them, hey, look, that's not how that is, you know, and try and bring D&D into prison.
So, because it sounds like it was a positive force. It sounds like it was something that people would just put aside their differences and come together and play an adventure game. That sounds like a very positive thing. Now, there were probably, I'm sure there were tons of people that weren't participating in this, but still,
they'd be watching. They'd watch. Some of them, just like out here, you have, you know, the discrepancies. Oh, well, you know, and that's a big thing to me is what does a D&D player look like? You know, because, oh, well, you look like a nerd, or wait a minute, you're a heavy equipment mechanic. You don't belong in D&D. And it's like, how are you going to stereotype me and them? You know, we played games at Books A Million down in Leesburg. And I remember, and I'm not a violent person, but I will protect my players. And two of the guys, you know, I guess you would call them your typical D&D players. They had the look about them, I guess, that, like I said, the stereotype. And people would mess with them out in the parking lot. And then I'd pull up and, you know, I would address them. And they'd be like, well, why are you jumping in? It's like, because I play D&D. And they're like, no, you don't look the type. And it's like, well, what is the type? Because I was a mechanic at the time. And I would defend anybody in any of my groups. Like I said, this room actually is where I first started my class here. And I will defend anybody that wants to play D&D because that's their right. Nobody has the right to stereotype them or say, oh, well, you're a typical D&D player and you're not a typical. Well, what is it? What does a typical D&D player look like?
For sure. There's a lot of stereotypes that a D&D player is a skinny nerd with glasses and oh man.
And that's what people are afraid of. And that's why people don't join in-person groups. Me personally, if you join Discord or you join a in-person group, do what you feel, because I know there's social anxiety. I know, sometimes it's hard to meet new people. But as a DM, I've met tons of people. But yet these stereotypes, and that's what gets people nervous about D&D.
Sure. And it sounds like you've played with a lot of different people, and you've run inside and outside of prisons. And here's my question now. How would you say that your group in prison differs from the people you've played with outside of prison? Do they get up to more things? Are they any different, would you say?
So in prison, when we're playing, my characters that play in my game are more devious. Of course, we're criminals, so they're more devious. Oh, well, my rogues are more devious, more thief-like. Hey, I'm going to pickpocket this guy. You do know that's a captain of the guard. I don't care. And we're associating it with prison because we have guards and we're trying to see if we can do it in the game. And it's crazy because between in there and out here, now understand I was like middle size for my group. I had bigger guys playing. I mean, one guy was 450 pounds, big guy. We called him Hog. Big man playing. If you said anything bad about it, oh, well, what are y'all playing? What's it to you? And he'd stand up. So we take it a lot more serious in prison on D&D.
Were there people who were watching you guys play and kind of making fun of it, thinking it was a nerd thing at first, who ended up part of the game?
I did. A buddy of mine became real good friends. We were kind of opposite organizations, but he slept right next to me. And he's like, oh, what are you reading? Oh, that nerdy stuff. And then I throw him a book. And since then, every night, hey, man, let's play. Let's build a character. Let's play. Let's build a character. And it just came to fruition that after that, everybody started seeing and everybody started joining in.
What were the common character types? Like, were the characters people built different in there?
It was. Okay. So, your fighters, obviously you had your fighters, your rogues, but it's the personality that they put with them, because now we have an escape route. So now you're putting, even out here, you put yourself into your character, but they put themselves more into their characters than you do out here, because now you have someplace you want to escape, you want to get away from. So now your characters are you. I mean, when we ran a session in there, I wouldn't call a guy by John or Billy or whatever. I wouldn't call them by their names. I'd call them by their character name because they would not answer by their real names. When we were playing, it was their character name. That was it. And we were lost.
So it sounds like an amazing form of escapism for the circumstances. See, at first when I heard this, I was thinking, I'm not really sure how the logistics of something would work like this, but now I'm kind of seeing this is a big escape. It sounds like a very positive force. So another question then, you would have people coming and going fairly frequently, it seems. So how did you accommodate for gaining and losing people as frequently as I assume you did?
So in there, you might stay out of camp for a few years, but if we did lose a few people, we tried to stay away from people that we knew that were going to leave right away. But if we knew you were going to stay for a few months, we would accommodate by making another game and running that game. So there was a few DMs. I taught a few guys how to run the games, and we would have enough books to where one guy would run a game a night or I would run a game just for the people that were leaving, just so they had something to do. So we didn't discriminate,
Sure. And so it sounds like, were you the first one to kind of come in to this place and be like, all right, we need to set up a D&D game? Or were there people who
There
were
were
running
people
before you?
there,
Okay.
but like I said again, typical stereotype. They saw what they look like, and they're like, well, you know, skinny white guy or skinny black guy trying to. And then you have me coming in, and then my buddy John and, you know, Mike and everybody, and now we're bigger dudes and we're playing it. So they really didn't say too much about us playing as they would the other group. And then they would get, oh, well, if they can play, then I want to play, you know, because you're looking at big dudes that are tatted up, you know, that, you know, the prison political system we're high up in. So now they're like, well, if they can do it, we can do it.
Okay.
You know,
so it became kind of a status thing, not necessarily to play, but it wouldn't ruin
Right.
your status.
Now, once they got to playing, then they would go to the other group and be like, hey, look, I want to play in your game. Because let's face it, some of them other guys knew more about it than I did. So they would actually go to them and, hey, I want to play in your game now, you know, whereas before they wouldn't pay him, you know, 2 cents of attention. Now they're paying him attention.
How many people did you typically have at a table?
Well, it wasn't a table.
Oh.
We had bunks.
Oh.
So we never played in the day room because our spinners were illegal because they were homemade.
Oh.
Or, you know, the tiles because we marked them up, so they became contraband. So we played at the bunks. Now I slept in a double bunk, so my bunk was the table, and we have foot lockers that we'd bring around. And my buddy John was on one side, Mike was on the other. So they would sit on their beds, and that's how we would play.
Okay. So it was like a group of like maybe 4 or 5 guys?
Oh, no, we tried to get 8 in there.
Oh, 8.
Because I would sit at the head of my bed, which nobody sits at the head of your bed. I sit at the head of my bed. Somebody sits at the lower end, you know, because you'd have to straddle it. And then we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 people playing.
And I know you said that the player's handbook and things like that were contraband because of the fireball thing, which is something I would have never thought of.
Right.
But did the guards or did anybody know what you were doing? Were they like turning a blind eye? Were they interested? How did they react?
Well, when you see like certain people and there's a group of them at a bed, of course they're going to come back there and see. And then when they saw what we were doing, you know, they would keep an eye, and eventually they just left us alone and let us do it because, you know, the individuals that were playing, you know, like I said, we were part of organizations. We're getting along in a dormitory setting, which is houses 91 people. So if you got people that are running the dorm, you know, like dorm bosses or however you want to say it, or pod bosses, sitting there playing D&D and leaving people alone, they tend to leave you alone.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds like this was illegal at a logistical, bureaucratic level, but on the individual human level, you had people coming by who were like, okay, these guys are getting along. This is a good thing, and leaving you alone.
So another thing would be like 2 people per bunk. So it would be the person that had the bunk and one other person. Now we got crafty because we would slide the lockers. So now it is 2 people per bunk, but all the lockers are being used. So we kind of got, you know, technically got a way around the bunk area or situation, but so they kind of left us alone because it was like ingenious. Or if we played on a single bunk, then, you know, same scenario, bring the foot lockers over. You know, when count time came, we automatically left our stuff, went right to our bunks. You know, we knew what was expected of us to keep playing, so we followed the rules as best we could.
Okay. And so before we kind of sat down and started talking, you told me you had some really good stories, and now I'm interested.
Well, the one was the Raven Loft. So we played that for a year, and then we had somebody join in the last 2 weeks, which we didn't know was going to be the last 2 weeks. He was energetic. He wanted to be in there. So now, mind you, we played this for 5 days a week for a whole year. So we get into the, you know, Strahd's tomb. So we're like, okay, wait for it. We got to look at what end. He's like, oh, I'm just going to lift open the casket. Lift open the casket. It was this feat. I was the last one to make it to the door before I died. All of us died. Now, you played D&D. You know, a year's worth of 5 days a week, your character, you love that character. So one of us went to the officer, said, hey, you know, he done killed us. We're going to take him in the shower. He went to the other side and said, I don't know nothing. We drug him from the bed area all the way into the bathroom, turned the water on, kind of slapping his stomach and everything, messing with him. We didn't want to hurt him, but,
Sure.
you done killed our characters. But so that was one of them. One funny story was my character. I just joined a group and my character died within 10 minutes of playing. I rolled so horribly and they felt so bad for me. They stopped that game and remade another game so I could play just because I died so fast. So
yeah, that's something in my games, people die. It just sort of happens.
Not within 10 minutes. I got caught in 2 tornadoes, one right behind the other one.
No.
And it's...
Was that an adventure or a homebrew? Or
it was an adventure.
Okay.
In there, we're big on homebrew because we're limited on the resources and everything. It was... Let's see, another one. This is when I first started because I was playing 2.0, our second edition. And I died within 20 minutes. I just read a book, a novel series in prison. I don't remember what it is, but it had halflings in it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be a halfling called Raven. Yeah. Didn't know anything about it. Fire heard something, left it. Yeah, we got jumped by bugbears. Killed the whole party.
Oh.
And they banned me from playing. So a week later, they came and said, hey, man, you got to learn how to play. So they sat down with me. And from what I learned in prison, I came out here and I wanted to do a class setting. Now I have a easel and a whiteboard. And that's what I brought in to do these classes with. We went over character creation. One night, 3 hours, we went through the whole player's handbook. And I did talk to a couple of my players on Saturday and they were good with it. Jid and Jordan, our mother-daughter team. And Jordan's around 14. She is my baddest sorcerer yet. And if I could get a challenge here with a DM and a player, a tag team challenge, I would take Jordan. She has picked it up. Her mom has picked it up. And we've been in here. They were the originals for a year and 3 months now.
Oh.
And she has picked it up. And with Jordan with the PH, I watched his videos.
Oh, yeah.
That's actually the history, because he has the history of Terrell, which is Forgotten Rooms. And that's what the videos I show so they understand the history. So I don't only teach you how to play or how to DM, I teach you the history of Terrell. And I teach you the history of D&D from Gary Gygax forward. So you learn everything about D&D from Terrell to Gary Gygax to how to play.
And it sounds like you have run games with very few resources at your disposal and all the resources, because now we're talking about Jordan with a PH, which I've used him too. He's he's a great YouTuber.
Now he's got the series on the history of Terrell. There's 180, but I incorporated into my game. Like right now I'm running the Vecna, where he's trying to destroy history. And I run Jordan's videos on how they'll go to certain places like Cholt and grab the text to save history. So I'm running off of his videos and Vecna right now. So it makes for a good, combination.
So as someone who's taught lots of DMs, it sounds like. Now it sounds like you mostly play Dungeons and Dragons. I heard Shadowrun as well.
Shadowrun, Phase World, Chaos Earth, Star Wars. I played in prison. I played a lot of them, a lot of different ones.
So it wasn't just D&D, it was lots of RPGs. All right, that, even better. So as someone who has taught actual classes on how to run games, what do you think is the piece of advice that goes the farthest? Like what is the most important piece of advice for someone who is new to running games?
All right. So I have a book and it's called the Complete Dummies Guide to D&D.
You have a book, you wrote it? Or you own the book.
The Dummies, you know how you got the Complete Idiot's Guide, then you have the Dummies Guide. I don't know where, I can't find it no more, but I found that one. You have to dummy it down. You have to. 5e is supposed to be the easiest edition that we have. It's still difficult for people that have not played. When I first started, I ran it like a classroom. I went through over everything from page 1 to the end page. I went over everything. I would stop. I would ask questions. You want to kind of, dummy it down for them. And people aren't stupid, but the problem is this is something new. That's like me saying, okay, here's a book on auto mechanics. Jump right in there. It's not going to happen. It's going to take time. I've got to dummy it down. And when I say dummy it down, I just got to, water it down. You're not stupid by any old means. You're smart because, you play D&D, you're running a podcast. But certain areas people don't know. So if you water it down for them and show them how to do it, what I do is when I water it down and they start playing, then I start tightening up.
Mm-hmm.
So once they start getting used to certain aspects and I see it, then I start tightening up. Okay, my roles, they don't see my roles. Now I don't, where it might be a critical hit on them, it was, I'd take a few numbers off. Now it's not. Now I'm starting to tighten up on them.
Okay.
But give them a grace period. When you teach them, let them play that style for a while, then start tightening up on it. So now they're starting to learn. It's a continuous learning aspect in my games. I have DMs that help. And, like I said, Jen Jordan, I'm super proud of Jordan. She is amazing. But now, and I told her, I'm not going to help y'all no more.
Yeah.
Now it's time for me to tighten up. Y'all are going to learn. And they go into a tavern, look at the boards on the tavern wall, go up to certain people, perception checks. Simple thing like a perception check. Now they're starting to do it because now I'm like, what are you doing? I'm not telling you nothing. What are you doing? So now they're getting into perception checks. What are we seeing in the tavern? Is there a place where we can get jobs at or look on the boards and things? So now they're starting to pick it up more.
Okay. That's interesting because some of that's similar to my DMing philosophy, but some of it's a little bit different. I don't take it easy on people, though. I do teach them the basics first.
But you also have to remember, if you don't, some people leave because once they see that it's hard and their character dies, they get frustrated. So now if their character dies, they know they did something wrong.
Yeah.
Where in the beginning I would take it fight, and in the beginning I almost killed 2 of my characters. So, I lightened up a little bit, let them get used to it. And then now I'm starting to take, initiative and going a little bit harder on them.
Oh, sure. I definitely see that side of things. Right. Well, this has been a very interesting conversation. Is there anything that I did not ask you that you wanted to talk about?
I mean, we talked about everything, from the stereotyping of D&D players and, the social anxiety that people have. And to me personally, like I said, it doesn't matter if you're playing Discord or if you're playing in-person games. It's just a stereotype that people have. And, sometimes, I see it where people don't want to play because they don't want to be stereotyped, or people do want to play, but they want to play on Discord where they don't want to be in real life because of the social anxiety. And they're afraid of people making fun of them. And like I tell my group, when you're here, you are my group. Nobody's going to mess with you. That's the DM's job right there.
Sure.
Somebody comes to the door. Oh, what do you? No, you need to go ahead and walk away and leave my group alone.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you that playing with real life people who are made of meat is better than like the pixel people on the internet.
Yep.
I totally agree with that. But yeah, anyway, thank you for sitting down with me. I really appreciated this conversation. I learned a lot, especially about how to make fireballs.
Yeah. But if you ever have any questions, just ask me. I'll be more than willing to jump back on here again with you.